Thank you, Peter, for the introduction. Thank you to Ambrosetti for inviting me back. It would be excellent if this was a progress report on the reform agenda that I outlined here last time, but it's not. It's an epitaph of sorts of that reform agenda, which was sidelined and replaced by a new memorandum of understanding. But I shall try to make not a spurious, I hope, connection between the two issues. And I think that Peter's introduction was, in a sense, exceptionally pertinent in that attempt to bring together the two contexts, migration crisis and the Eurozone crisis. Now, if Emmanuel is right that there is a religious war happening in Europe between Catholic Europe, as you put it, Emmanuel, and Calvinist Europe, I wonder where we are, the Greeks. And I suspect that after those 5-6 months in office, I feel that we are in the situation where we wanted to espouse orthodox economic reformism, but I ended up in a Catholic protestation of what was going on. Oscar Wilde was onto something pertinent and profound when he said that Britain and the United States were divided by a common language. It would be equally pertinent to say that we in Europe have succeeded in being divided by a common currency. And to pierce through this mystery, to understand how that might be, you need to look closely at a conundrum, which I think that can unite us in a way. The conundrum has three different folds, three different parts. The first one is that the majority of people in the surplus countries, Germany primarily, would want Greece to stay in the Eurozone because the alternative is harder to fathom, as long as Greece sticks to the MOU, sticks to the program that was initially introduced, implemented, imposed upon Greece in 2010, and now has a third variety of it being pushed through Greek parliament just a few days ago, or weeks ago. The second part of the conundrum is that most Greeks, the vast majority, crushing majority of Greeks, want to stay in the euro, but they disdain this particular program. And the third part of the conundrum is that the German finance minister, Dr. Wolfgang Schäuble, myself, the Greek government, which just resigned, the Greek government that is going to get elected, whichever it might be, the International Monetary Fund, the United States Treasury Department, lots of other people, believe that this program is impossible to enforce, to implement successfully. It's not a viable program. I know that Wolfgang Schäuble believes that because he told me so. It's quite clear that the particular program, I'm not going to generalize now about programs in Europe, the particular program for Greece was a spectacular failure. We have an unsustainable debt, which forces us, because we're in denial of it, to set very high, extraordinarily high primary surplus targets, which cannot be achieved, but just the announcement of them in an environment, in an economy which has no banking system, no functioning banking system from the point of view of credit creation, and a complete dearth of investment. In that context, these primary surpluses, everybody knows, are a foreshadowing of further tax rises that will make any investments currently pushed through non-profitable. And therefore, this is simply a perpetuation of this spiral. Where Dr. Schäuble and I disagreed was on how to interpret this and what to do about it. His view, and this is one that is quite openly stated, is that in the case of Greece, the only solution is Grexit. In my view, this would be a very terrible turn of events for Europe. It would unleash catastrophic forces throughout the Eurozone that we cannot control, which I can't even imagine before they are unleashed. And therefore, I was in a situation where, at least in my mind, in my logic, the only logical resolution would be a program that could be made to work. That program was first, as I said before, presented here a few months ago. And it was at a time when I had formed a committee of experts to help us put this together. The Greek plan for ending the crisis. If you want, our own version of the MOU. If we were given a chance to propose a program for reforming Greece deeply, for ending the divergence and bringing us closer to the European Union and to the monetary union in particular, what would it be? So I assembled a team of experts both within my ministry, within Greece, but also outside of Greece. Jeff Sachs of Columbia University co-authored this plan with me, and I thank him profusely for that. Had some rather radical left-wingers also join me, like Larry Summers and Thomas Mayer, who used to be chief economist at Deutsche Bank. I'm joking. There was nothing radical about that program. The whole point about this program was, and you can read it on the internet because I published it recently, comprised what I considered was a sensible macroeconomic fiscal consolidation plan, which began with a particular proposal about debt swaps without any kind of haircuts that would lessen the pressure on the funding gaps of the Greek economy, of the Greek state, allowing us to have sustainable primary surpluses in the order of 2%, and bundling together the public assets that remain in Greek state ownership into an investment vehicle that could be granted at some point a banking license in order to create a homegrown investment flow through collateralization into those very public assets that need to be developing so that both their value and their price increases. A bad bank to deal with a crashing size of non-performing loans and making sure, guaranteeing that any recapitalization is wasted in the end, until and unless the non-performing loans, we're talking about 45% of non-performing loans in the Greek banking sector. So that was, in a sense, and what we call the policy framework for Greece's fiscal consolidation, recovery and growth. And it was completed with a series of microeconomic reforms, product market reforms, as well as, and this is very important, tax administration reforms. You can imagine why. Now, the fact that very few people know about this plan, this document, is a case in point for this conversation. It was impossible to table it at the Eurogroup. It was impossible to get the troika of lenders with whom we had most of our conversations to discuss it with us. And this is a revelation. It became very difficult for me to convince my prime minister to endorse it, not because he was in disagreement about it, but because he understood that the Troika considered the tabling of such a Greek plan a kind of backtracking, a kind of inimical act towards the Troika process. 2 months later, after my failure to convince my prime minister to turn this into the Greek government's plan, my prime minister was forced to capitulate to what I consider, and I think what many people consider, the failed MOU, the failed program, which now is in a new incarnation. Let me just mention one thing about this incarnation of the program. If you read it in the English language version, because it's the only one that is readable, the rest is more or less Google Translate, and it's got pieces missing from it. It mentions, the only thing it says about growth is that the authorities, the Greek authorities, and the institutions commit to come up with a plan for growth in March 2016. What? After so many years, we still don't have a growth plan? So the point I want to make, the claim I want to make, is that if you compare this plan that Jeff Sachs and myself and others put together with the MOU that in the end was passed through Parliament, there's no contest. There's only one moderate, economically credible, and financially sophisticated plan. And it's that, not the MOU that was pushed through. So the question is, why? Why were we refused the right, if you want, to discuss Greece's plan for recovery, for consolidation and for reforms. And I shall try to be very succinct in answering this. The answer cannot be found in the minutiae of the Greek economic crisis. It lurks in the Eurozone's original existentialist crisis. The pioneers of the monetary union, as we all know, dithered. They remained undecided as to whether we wanted the monetary union, the euro, to be a gold standard-like regime or to be sovereign money. If you opt for a gold standard-like regime, you have to have strict rules, and exit is the only alternative to permanent recession once you enter that deflationary cycle. Sovereign currency, you need require a political union of sorts, you need a way of recycling surpluses, you need something like a politically governed fiscal union. The indecision remains. We have a dramatic clash, Emmanuel referred to it as a religious war, effectively between, allow me to be a bit blunt, between Paris and Berlin, on what form the political union should take. I don't think anybody disagrees that we need a political union at this stage, but there is a very serious disagreement on what it should be, and there is a failure of coordination, a failure of trust. In a sense, since I have had a previous life as a game theorist, it was a little bit like the Jean-Jacques Rousseau's stag hunt game, where the outcome ends up being suboptimal, even though it could be perfectly in equilibrium to have a better outcome. So it's not a prisoner's dilemma, it's not a free-riding problem, it's a failure of coordination based on mistrust. Little Greece and our democracy was crushed this summer while the elephants tussled. It pains me to see my good friend and comrade, former Prime Minister now, Alexis Tsipras, be forced at the threat of Grexit to accept a program that the IMF, that he, that I, even Dr. Schäuble do not believe is viable. This summer, we have performed 2 acts of violence against the integrity and soul of Europe. One was to threaten a democratically elected government with Grexit, with the fragmentation of the Eurozone, in order to get it to accept a program that everybody knows can't work, only because Berlin and Paris haven't got their act together to decide what kind of political union we want, if my hypothesis is correct. And at the same time, on the basis of what Peter was saying before, alluding to before, I don't want to put words into your mouth, Peter, about this mentality, this tendency to renationalize vision, to renationalize our ambition as Europeans to govern this continent. The mentality of what's in it for me, which led us to this appalling, outrageous bickering regarding who is going to take fewer migrants, refugees, I should say. Hope never dies. I want to finish off optimistically, and I'm going to second Peter's commendation of the German government's leadership on the matter of refugees. I want to also second Emmanuel's points regarding the importance of making this distinction between consolidation, reforms, between competitiveness, which entails a degree of beggar than neighbor, versus productivity growth. And I want to say that it is about time we expressed a revived confidence in this continent, in our Europe, a revived confidence which can only, however, yield results if we rage against the inefficiency of our monetary union, which is due to its lack of democratic governance of our money. Thank you.